I want to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers transitioning from one Ohio powerhouse to another. The Cleveland Cavaliers this season are 29-4. They are in the middle of what should be like one of their toughest road trips of the season, playing Denver, Golden State, LA, and the Mavericks back to back to back to back. They beat Denver by 14. They beat the Warriors by 18. And they beat the Lakers by 12. They still have Dallas. That'll be tomorrow. I feel like this little road trip here is kind of the one that has really clued people into how good this team is. And honestly, even in my mind a little bit, I've understood how good they are for a minute. We talked a lot about the Cavs this year and how much we really respect them and think they've been unbelievable this season. But man, like going on this road trip, doing what they've done, even though the Warriors are scuffling right now, the Lakers had looked pretty good recently. And then on top of it, Denver had looked like, like an up and down team at the end of the day, but to just sweep these three road games, then you have Dallas here coming up, without Luka, without, Najee, who's still suspended. I think PJ might also still be out. I'm blown away with what Cleveland has done. I am so blown away with how impressive they have been in just taking care of business. We're going to talk about if we think they are real contenders so far and what we think to the extent they are real contenders. And maybe we'll do like a quick little contender ranking. But more than that, I just think that this team is so remarkably impressive for how they've gone about taking care of business. What has impressed you most about Cleveland to this point?
Yeah, so I text you a couple weeks ago. I was like, you know what we should do? We should revisit our preseason, predictions and stuff like that. And I was looking through mine. I was like, oh, that one wasn't bad. That one, oh, I said the Cavs were going to have to make a trade by the deadline. That was really stupid and really wrong as it looks now because these guys have figured it out. I mean, the front court, Mobley is shooting well from three, even though the volume isn't crazy. But I think the backcourt, and you asked me this question, like you said, we've talked about him before, what I thought was the most impressive, the biggest difference for them offensively. I think it's the way that Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell play off of each other. I think it's Donovan Mitchell, who's having an incredible season, is still willing to be unselfish and let Darius do his thing at times. I think it's the way Darius relocates and moves off the ball. I think it's the way Donovan relocates and moves off the ball. I think it's what Donovan has locked in defensively this year and the effort he's giving on that end. And then whether it's coaching, roster construction, whatever, I continue to watch this team and more than any other team go, these guys know their roles and they embrace their roles. They are willing to do what they are asked to do. We've sat here and raved about Ty Jerome off the bench. We've talked about Sam Merrill. You know who else is really good off the bench for them? Karis freaking LeVert is pretty darn good for them off the bench as well. I think they do interesting things coaching-wise, offensively. They play a lot of zone. I was watching the Warriors game the other night and it was like, okay, they went zone. And then all of a sudden I'm like, they're full denying Steph Curry. I think they're like in a box and one type of thing here against the Warriors. Like they do some interesting things defensively as well. I find myself really enjoying watching them play because they have the stars, but also all of their role players move without the ball. They move the ball well, all of that stuff. I enjoy this team and they're really, really good.
So the thing that always stands out most to me with them right now is just the way that their offense has actually changed from last season. Last year, this Cavs offense was just nowhere near as powerful as it is right now. Do you know that they have the number one offense in the league right now?
I did actually know, but only because I watched, like I say, I watched that recent game against the Warriors and I looked it up. It's crazy.
They were 18th last season in offense. They have increased their offensive rating by 6 points per 100 possessions. And to me, the big reason why, and there are a few reasons why, but I think that the most important reason why maybe is that they've increased their pace. And it doesn't always feel like they've increased their pace in transition. It feels like to me that they have started to run more consistent, just like quick hitter plays early on in sets. Like Garland will bring the ball down the court. Jared Allen will set a screen, and then he'll go set a flare for Donovan Mitchell. And Mitchell will get open real quick, and he'll either shoot a three or drive off of it. Or, Garland to Allen, we're just going to get downhill real quick. We're going to set just like a really quick, maybe double drag in transition and find Jared Allen. Like nothing complicated. They're not, reinventing the wheel offensively, but they're finding different ways to be able to attack teams using quick hitting actions. Last season, they were 22nd in pace per game. This year, they are 6th. And it feels like to me, it's not like always coming in the flow of like transition basketball. It feels more like it's early offense, early half court offense, as opposed to, okay, we got to go run this like tried and true, we're going to break down a defense, with off ball movement or anything like that. Then we're going to like end up in just a situation where Donovan is isolating or something like that. It really feels like to me that they are just doing the right things, getting into their offense earlier while the defense is still rotating and scrambling and trying to pick up in transition, and taking advantage of that a little bit better.
They have real flow. Like offensively, they have real flow, and all of these guys, like I said, that's what I love, is it's not just the unselfishness of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, but you have guys like Dean Wade, who is either going to catch and shoot it or he's going to move it. Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, like all of these guys, Niang, they're going to catch the ball and they're either going to score it if they're open, or they're going to move it. They're going to move off the ball. The spacing is pretty good as a team that is 6th in 3-point attempt rate and 1st in 3-point percentage. I mean, all of these guys are shooting the ball extremely well right now. And as somebody mentioned in the comments, Max Strus is now just getting integrated back into it as well. So that adds another guy to all of this. I think like even Jarrett Allen's skill level as a big sometimes is underappreciated. He's really good 3 to 10 feet with finishing those shots. I think you can trust him to short roll pass, all of that. So I just like the way their offense flows. And I can't say it any differently other than these guys know their roles and they have accepted them. And that's why it continues to look so good. And again, I like the creativity defensively. In that one game, I feel like they played obviously man, 2-3 zone, a 3-2 zone, and some boxing 1-ish type of defense against the Warriors. And I just love coaches in the NBA that are willing to experiment and try different things on the defensive end.
Yeah, and by the way, like, being 29-4, they've played a lot of garbage time minutes, unsurprisingly as well. Even with cleaning the glasses numbers, if you filter out the garbage time minutes, they are still 1st in offense. They have a 123.2 offensive rating and a 110 defensive rating. They are just kicking the shit out of everybody. Over the last 2 weeks, their point differential is plus 20. Like they are just beating the brakes off of everybody right now. And we can talk about Kenny Atkinson. I feel like I kind of just did for a second, without mentioning that Kenny's the one. The big change here is the coaching change from JB Bickerstaff, who's done a great job in Detroit, to Kenny Atkinson. Like I said last week with Mike Brown, right? Or I guess earlier this week. Mike Brown did a really good job with Sacramento. I think JB Bickerstaff did a really good job with Cleveland. Sometimes it just requires a bit of a different mind. It just requires a bit of a change, a bit of a voice change, a bit of a scheme change. It can be like the Cavs are experiencing right now in order to get the most out of a team. It doesn't mean that JB was a bad coach. It doesn't mean that, he didn't do a great job when he was there in Cleveland. It just means that this group of players who they have under contract now for a long term, with Donovan and Darius and Jarrett and Evan, like all of these guys are there for the long haul. Sometimes you need to make a change, and changing the coach is the thing that makes the most sense. And we're seeing that this year with Cleveland, that just making that adjustment, getting them into a different mode, I think has changed the way that they're playing basketball. and maybe has engaged them in some way, shape, or form that is slightly different in terms of connection to the material that the coach is throwing at them.
Yeah, I mean, I think we always want to pinpoint exactly like, okay, why is Kenny better for these guys than JB was? And sometimes we can't, because this is one thing I've learned, and from being in locker rooms, we don't know as outsiders. We don't know what those conversations were. Like I was just in a media room with JB Bickerstaff, and his presence, I was like, man, this seems like a really good dude. I enjoyed being there. I loved his presence, all of that. I'm not saying JB's bad in the locker room, but I had coach, like, listen, my JUCO coach and I did not get along. I left JUCO not speaking to him. But I text him every Christmas, hey, coach, love you. Like, hope you're doing well, all of that stuff. Like, we didn't necessarily vibe as a player coach type. And he's a great person. I feel like I'm a good person and was a coachable player. And he was a good coach and won a lot of games. But it's just sometimes things don't, it's a very competitive space, Sam, as you know. Yeah. And when competitive juices are, I'm a much different person when you put a basketball in my hand than I am sitting here recording a podcast with you. And everybody would be. So maybe there's something about how Kenny goes about his business that clicks with Donovan and Darius. Or the other thing is, maybe it was a wake-up call to Donovan and Darius, like, dang, our coach just got fired. There's all this talk, whatever. Maybe we need to flip this switch just a little bit so we work together better. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts, I guess, and ideas of why this has went the way it has. And Kenny does deserve credit for it, because I do think he's implemented some things that are obviously working very well.
The other thing I'll bring up here, just statistically, looking through the cleaning the glass numbers, is, they're not just beating up on bad teams either. If you look through and say, filter by the top 10 defenses in the league and how opposing teams perform against teams with top 10 defenses, the Cavaliers still have the best offense in the league against teams with top 10 defenses. And they have it by like 1.5 points over the Knicks. They have been elite on the offensive end this season. And I think that does come down to Kenny Atkinson versus JB Bickerstaff. All due respect to JB, who I think does, again, he's doing a great job with Detroit, did a great job with the young Cavs team, kind of getting them along. But, even if you look at what the Cavs have done in terms of just wins and losses against top 10 teams so far, they're 5-2 against teams with a top 10 point differential per cleaning the glass. They have a plus 6.4 point differential in terms of points per 100 in those games. There are currently 6 teams right now with a positive point differential against top 10 teams in the league. Can you name those 6 teams, Bryce?
Celtics.
Yep.
Thunder
are number 1. Celtics are number 2.
Grizzlies
are 7th currently, so they are not there. They are losing those games by 3 points.
3
per
points. 100. The Knicks?
The Knicks are in that mix, plus 2.8.
So then I will go. Who is somebody? What about the Mavericks?
The Mavericks are in this group, plus 1.6. They are 6th.
So I've named 4 of the 6. 5 of the. There's one more team?
5 of the 6. There's one more.
Feel like let's go. Definitely not them. I feel like it's somebody like, is it the Lakers or somebody like that? It's not the Lakers. The Rockets. Yeah.
Alex.
So I was trying not to just go with the standings. So
yeah, the Rockets are currently 4th in the league against top 10 teams in terms of point differential. They are a plus 3.1. By the way, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 teams only with a winning record against those teams. The Celtics are only 3-3 in those games. They've just beaten the brakes off of a few teams. But yeah, I am intrigued to see what this means. But it means the Cavs, to me, are very clearly, if you're beating top 10 teams, you have the number 1 offense in the league against top 10 defenses. You have a top 10 defense against top 10 offenses like they do. This says to me like real contender. And I think it's worth talking about the players a little bit as well, just in terms of what we're seeing. I think you mentioned the synergy between Garland and Mitchell already. I think that's 100% like a real factor here. They look great, but Mitchell has always looked great and has looked, fantastic throughout his Cavs tenure. Garland broke his jaw last year, and I think that really fucked with him in a real way. This year, that speed and touch and like balance combo is all back.
Yeah.
Has that nasty little floater once he gets into the lane, willing to drive kind of all the time again. He's averaging 14 drives per game, which I believe is in the top 15 league wide. He's shooting 57% on those drives, but also averaging 6.5 kickouts, so passes per game. Maybe not necessarily kickouts, can be dump offs as well, but 6.5 passes per game off of those drives, which is 5th in the league. He's 3rd in assists per game off of his drives. And the thing about it too is that like he and Mitchell aren't really like dominating the ball. They both only average 4.8 minutes per game on the ball each. That's like right around like 25th to 30th in the league. So like, it's not like Cade or LaMelo or somebody like that, or Jalen Brunson, right? Guys that like just have the ball in their hands all the time. I think that the kind of combination of those two numbers shows to me is that when Garland has the ball, and this shows up on tape, right? Like he's exceptionally aggressive. And he is trying to get downhill, trying to attack, trying to get to the basket, trying to get kickouts, trying to get paint touches. And it's been really, really impactful on their offense. We're going to get to All-Stars later. I'll just say I have Darius Garland on my All-Star team right now. He has been, to me, just completely outstanding this season. And like I think there is a very real case that he is driving their offense just as much, if not more so, honestly, than what Donovan Mitchell is. Mitchell gets the toughest matchup every night, and I don't want to discount that. But Darius's ability to pass and play make and his synergy with Jarrett Allen, I kind of think that there's a case, he and Mitchell do it together for sure. It's not a one or the other situation. But if I was assigning credit, like I would say probably like, I don't know what the numbers are, but like 40% to Garland and like 37% to Mitchell right now, or something like that, in terms of like, if I was assigning credit for how I've enjoyed watching their offense and how good their offense has been so far.
That's interesting. And the Cavs were going to be a fun conversation of the All-Star thing because of like how many guys do you put in there? Which of the guys do you put in there? Because I mean, I think Evan Mobley is having an incredible season. And whenever you factor in both sides of the floor, I think he has a real argument, especially if you're only going to put 2 Cavs in, for him to be the second Cav.
Just one defensive player of the month in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. And so I think it'll be a fun conversation in a very positive way. So hopefully people don't turn it negative in some capacity. I think it's very positive because these guys have been awesome. And obviously, Jarrett Allen deserves a lot of credit as well.
Let's get to a quick little note from Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money action. There are over 10 million members. Like I said a second ago, they invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks always puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. We are big fans of Prize Picks here. We absolutely love the app and what they're doing for the daily fantasy sports scene. Download the app today and use code GameTheory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use that code GameTheory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
I find myself thinking, listen, I'm with you. I don't think the gap is drastic. I guess if you told me to assign 40-37, I would probably go opposite of you. I would probably give it to Donovan Mitchell with Darius.
I don't blame you for that either. Yeah.
But what I did realize watching the most recent game, looking at numbers and stuff like that, is the assist that Darius creates and how much he does that and how good he is working off of Donovan in these situations. So I have come to appreciate him even more than maybe what I would have coming into the season. And that gap is much closer than what I would have guessed 30 some games into the season.
The other guy that we have to bring up here, I think is just like different, is Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley has been unbelievable this season, averaging 18 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists per game, shooting 57% from the field, but also 43% from three. That is obviously just an enormous leap in terms of the 3-point percentage. The 2-point percentage, I think that what people may not have recognized a little bit last season was that he had continued to develop like real chemistry with some of the guards and was finding ways to roll to the rim and create shots that way. But a lot of that stuff came with Jared Allen out of the lineup a lot of the time. I think that they've found that blend now of how to make it work with Allen and Mobley. And a lot of it just has to do with Mobley being able to attack closeouts now and be able to make passes and make decisions off of attacking closeouts. Mm-hmm. Look, he still doesn't really get treated as like a real 3-point shooter. Teams will close out short on him all the time. He's hurting opposing teams when they close out short on him. He's making 43% of his threes, but that is what teams will do in the playoffs. And that will ultimately kind of hold the cards for them, how well Mobley is able to play in the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, if we were going to say 2 things that worried us the most, 2 things that worry me the most about this team come in the playoffs, it would be Garland defensively and the matchups and teams hunting him and him being able to hold up and all of that. And then the second thing would be what you mentioned here with Evan Mobley in terms of how does he make enough shots to make teams respect it? The percentage is good. You've already mentioned the volume, all of that. I will be interested to see if he can knock the shots down when it matters. I also think the release is very slow still for Evan Mobley on catch and shoot, which if I was defending him or scouting him, I would still ask for closeouts, but let my defenders know like, hey, you can play way off, but then you can get there still and contest it because it takes him a little while to get it off. And so I can still allow them to play off and be very good helpers. So those are probably the 2 things I point to the most, the Garland defense, Mobley spacing. I do think he can attack closeouts. I like seeing him be aggressive on his drives. And I think big picture, as he continues to fill his body out just a little bit, he's going to be even better on those drives with some added strength. The other thing is kind of like the 5th spot within this rotation and all of that. I love all of these guys, but you get into playoffs and you pick the right guys to keep in the rotation, not be in the rotation. All of that is going to be interesting. And that's where Kenny's really going to earn his money as the head coach, Sam, because he's not playing, I would assume, all of these guys come playoffs. So can he push the right buttons in terms of the Sam Merrills versus the Niangs versus, small versus big versus, Ty Jerome? All of those decisions are going to be really important come playoff time.
Well, and what I like about what they have in those circumstances actually is they kind of have different options for the way that
they do.
Teams play. Like you can go, if you want more of a playmaking bent, Karis LeVert. If you want to go smaller and play one of Allen or Mobley, you can go Dean Wade at the 4 and have like real offense and defense out there because Dean can shoot and he's a pretty good defender. If you want to just go like traditional, like 1 through 5, you can go Max Strus, and Strus is, still not quite shooting at the level that, he'll get to through his first 5 games, but Strus is going to shoot it and he's a pretty good one-on-one defender and does a good job. Sam Merrill, if you want like the elite level shooting, Ty Jerome, if you want the like playmaking and decision making out there that maybe Karis doesn't have, but Karis is able to get to the rim and attack and drive and get downhill, right? So they have a lot of ways to mix and match depending on what you need in any sort of given moment, which I think is really critical for them in the playoffs. Now, they have the Garland Mitchell problem in the playoffs that isn't going to change. Like they're going to have to play both of those guys. Otherwise, the offense is going to take a dip. Whether or not they're able to handle that will ultimately tell the tale of how far they're able to go in the playoffs. But the fact that they have a lot of different options for both the fourth and fifth guys and within their bench units, I do think is kind of a strength as opposed to a question.
I think it's a strength if the coach handles it correctly. And I'm not like
Fair
trying to call out Kenny Atkinson. That's not my intention here. I'm just saying that when you have decisions and options, you then are required to make the correct ones, as opposed to a team like, say, like the Celtics, who like, this is who we're going to play, the rotation stuff, the rotation decisions. It just is what it is. There's not a whole, like, are we going to play Jordan? Like, they're not trying to decide if they're going to play Jordan Walsh or not, or something like that. Kenny Atkinson and his staff has to go, okay, we're playing these guys in this series. Who are the other 4 guys we're going to play outside of the big 4? Okay, we won this series. Now we have to go to this guy and say, hey, thanks for what you just did, but you're going to set, hey, Sam Merrill, you didn't play last series, but now we really need your floor spacing and off-ball movement. Now you're going to come in and play after sitting. Obviously, I'm just using it as an example. So I agree with you that it can be a strength. It's only a strength if used correctly.
So here's my next question to you before we get into like what they look like as contenders. Is there really a move out there that you see that you would recommend for them? I'm kind of struggling with that, in all honesty. Like I might just kind of run with what they have right now, but also if I'm them, like I feel like, look, like if Boston gets hurt and, if Oklahoma City, doesn't get Chet back and things like that, like I think I might be in the game here. So the automatic inclination is to try and maximize that potential. But obviously they do have like somewhat limited assets to an extent, right? Like they have, because of the Donovan Mitchell deal, like they are down picks. Like they don't have a ton of them to be able to move. I believe that I think that they have one that they might be able to move. I think that they might be able to move the 2020 or the 2031 pick, if I remember correctly. Beyond that, like they have 1 million second-round picks that they can use, and then they have like guys on their team that are actually good at basketball, which is a big help. We didn't even mention Isaac Okoro in this either, and Okoro is somebody who, it looks like a guy who can really help and can give them a real defensive presence in certain moments. Is there a player out on the market that you look at and you're like, that's kind of a guy that I would use and go for?
So I laughed about the free Cam Whitmore comment because obviously people know I'm a huge Cam Whitmore fan. So my thing is, Sam, like I saw Cam Johnson, like sure, like Cam Johnson would make a lot of sense to slot into that spot at the 3. But what are they offering Brooklyn that Brooklyn wants? Like, is it is it LeVert because it's expiring and then they can just, but like, I don't think the Cam Johnson trade is just like more cap space for the Nets. I wouldn't think so. I would not agree with that, I guess, is what I should say. I don't know that you're right. There are players on here that are good at basketball, but how many of these guys are interesting to Brooklyn in that? I just think they get outbid, I guess, in a Cam Johnson trade. If they're going to make a move, I think it should be somebody like that, though, right? Like, would you agree? Like, It was kind of like the when we were talking about the Grizzlies for Dorian Finney-Smith, and I was like, I don't love it because it just, it adds another guy to a rotation that already has too many guys. If it's the Cavs, I think it has to be a true like upgrade where you're packaging a couple guys, maybe some seconds, whatever, and it's a real upgrade in your rotation where it's like, this guy is one of our top 6 players, ideally one of our top 5 players.
Yeah, and like the Cam Johnson thing is harder to kind of do than what you would think, if I remember correctly, because I think the Cavs are like quite close to the first apron. If I remember correctly, I don't think they're quite like a first apron team. I think that they are just like very close though. And like just giving up like Strus and Jalen Tyson in a pick like doesn't really work. Like that trade does not work. So you'd be moving multiple players for one guy, which is obviously like a very difficult deal. We've talked about that. Like it's very hard to move like 3 and 4 guys for one guy in season. It's just way more difficult to do that. I mean, like you could do something like, I think that Niang, Okoro, in Jalen Tyson plus a pick gets you Cam Johnson in terms of, making the money work. But like, does Brooklyn do that? Do you think? Like, it would depend on what they think about Jalen Tyson, right?
You said Niang, Okoro, and Tyson?
Yeah, and a pick.
And a pick. I assume a second round pick, not the 2031.
I'm saying the 2031 because
the
I don't think
21
I don't think Brooklyn would move him without the pick.
Yeah, of course. So I think that comes down to Jalen Tyson.
Yeah.
Right? Like for Brooklyn, that comes down to Jalen Tyson. I guess potentially maybe how they feel about Okoro, like if they think Okoro is a real asset for them. I mean, that pick's just so far out for Brooklyn that I like Jalen Tyson for what it's worth. My thing with Brooklyn is like I would want like a real return for Cam Johnson. Like I'm probably on the other, like I don't know where other people are at, but I'm not letting.
Oh no, like that's how they feel.
Okay,
I can tell you. Like they think like multiple firsts or like the equivalent of multiple firsts. Like if they had Jalen Tyson, I don't know where they had Jalen Tyson on their board last year. I'm just saying like if they had Jalen Tyson as like a top 20 player on their board last year, and they consider him a first round value plus another pick, like something like that is probably doable. But it's a little bit more complicated, I think, than what you would expect maybe.
Yeah. Somebody brought up, like, is it worth more? Like, I just know I'm on Spot Track right now and I can do LeVert and Dean Wade for Cam Johnson and it works. Like, I'm not saying that that's equal value, just money. I know it's not equal value. I'm just saying money wise, putting guys that are making right around 22 to match Cam Johnson's 22.5 is working. So I do think right with that, it seems like it works okay.
The other team that like I look at here, I mean, what is Portland going to do? Is kind of my question just in general. I mean, I love the idea of Denny Avdia for Cleveland, but they just gave up 2 firsts to get Denny.
That would be,
and I don't think they're going to. Yeah, and like I don't think Portland's going to take a loss on Denny Avdia.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think that would be awful process to then turn around. To me, that team needs to find, like, to me, Denny is part of the Shaden Sharp, the Scoot Henderson, the Donovan Clingan group of guys that right now I'm keeping on my roster to figure things out with.
Yeah, I agree. So
somebody brought up Kelly Olynyk. I didn't love the specific name, but the idea of a big kind of registered with me.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I could see that may be the guy that's not a huge upgrade, but just another big in case you need that third guy, even though you're going to stagger Mobley and Allen, and Mobley Shoney can play the 5. I could get behind that if there's some big out there that you don't give up a ton of assets for.
I mean, the name for me is Larry Nance. Like Larry Nance can play with both Allen and Mobley and could give them like a ton of flexibility. Like that is actually the move I would probably try and do. Is get somebody like Larry Nance. So like,
I like that.
Get the front court, some flexibility, get them a little bit more depth. Like that is the one place on this team that doesn't have a lot of depth, in my opinion, is the front court right now. So if you can go get like one more big, I feel like that would make a lot of sense. It's just, I don't know what the fuck Atlanta's doing with Larry Nance. It makes very, very little makes sense to me about what Atlanta is doing with Larry Nance, having only played him 15 games so far this year. And like he goes in and out of the lineup for reasons beyond my comprehension.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be, that one would be interesting to me. Listen, Okoro for Nance actually works. I know it can't work until for 13 days, but that works. Or you could do combinations of Niang and Tyson and some stuff like that if you needed to also.
Yeah. But here's the final question here. And this is the ultimate question that we asked when we started this is, do you think the Cavs are like real, genuine title contenders with this build and with how they've performed this year?
Okay, so I saw people already kind of like derailing this conversation going, well, they can't beat the Celtics, they can't beat the Thunder. So if we're going under that, then sure, then every other team can be taken out of the equation because I think those I think Oklahoma City is definitely the team I believe in the most in the West. And I think even with the records the way they are, Boston's the team I believe the most in the East. So sure, that doesn't, to me, that doesn't mean everybody else is out of the equation, because you said like there are other factors in play, injuries, stuff like that. So I would put, if you want to tier it out, I would put them in my next tier of teams. I think when we're talking true title contenders, I probably still have Boston and OKC in a tier above everybody else. And then Cleveland may even lead my next tier of teams.
Cleveland is number 3 for me right now, behind Oklahoma City and Boston. Whether or not I have them in a different tier than Cleveland or than Oklahoma City and Boston, I probably do, if I'm being honest. Like, I think that those two teams really match up well in the playoffs in terms of flexibility, and they just have fewer holes roster wise, because you can go big if you're Oklahoma City and Boston. You can go small if you're Oklahoma City and Boston across all swaths of the court, right? With Cleveland, because you have the two bigs and you have the two smalls, the flexibility is just a little bit more difficult to make work. There are other teams I'll hear out, but I would have Cleveland at 3 based off of how they've played. I mean, the team I would probably have at 4 is a team that, I might get yelled at for. Like, I would still have Dallas at 4. I think that team's really good. And when Luka was there, they looked like they were a wagon that was going to be a total monster this season. Then some mix of like the Knicks.
I was going to say the Knicks would be like, I like that tier, that next tier being the Cavs, the Knicks, the Thunder, or
not
excuse
the Thunder.
Excuse me, the Mavericks. The West is so hard.
Yeah, like, if you're asking me in the playoffs, like who I kind of believe in most, like the Lakers and Denver still probably are in that mix. Memphis, like, I just would like to see them stay healthy for an extended period of time before I put them, like, they're in that tier for sure. But like, I guess where I'm at is I might have Cleveland and Dallas like in a little mini separate tier for me above those other teams. Like,
you wouldn't
Denver
even have
and the
Lakers. You wouldn't have the Knicks in that same tier.
Maybe.
Also, I want to dispel something real quick, because I've seen it about 30 times in the chat, and this is why I don't normally watch the chat. Just because the Celtics, or excuse me, just because the Cavs lost to the Hawks twice, like the Celtics lost to teams twice. Like, they went 3-2 against the Pacers last year. Like, stuff happens in the regular season. Like, I don't think that should be your outwardly like argument against this team being good. So,
I mean, the Pacers, I believe, have they beaten Boston twice this year already? I can't remember. They just beat them earlier this week. I know that.
I just went to last year where the Celtics went 2-2 against the Hawks in their title winning season. They went 0-2 against the Nuggets, 3-2. Like, it's just, you don't dominate every team that you play against for whatever reason. So anyway,
and here's the other thing that is real about like these contender windows. And if you're the number 3 team, why you have to go for it. Like, if Chet doesn't come back for Oklahoma City, it changes things for Oklahoma City.
Sure.
If Kristaps gets hurt, and like that's a real factor for Boston, Boston is a fundamentally different team.
Yep.
Without Kristaps than they are with Kristaps. Do I think I would still take them in a series over Cleveland? Probably, but it gets like 50-50 to me, 55-45 probably toward Boston. And I'm taking a flyer on that if I'm Cleveland at the end of the day. So yeah, I am in favor of them going for it for sure. And I think that they are absolutely going to do so. And they have a real shot here. Like that, it's not quite as big as the window is not quite as open as it is for Oklahoma City and Boston, but the window is open here. Like this is a real team.